The time has come to where your tenant's getting ready to move out. And so I just want to talk about the whole process of vacancy and rental turn. So in terms of getting your property ready for rent, there's a few things that we need to kind of prepare for up front to make that happen. We've really worked so hard to develop a system that allows us to minimize vacancy for the owners that we manage for. And there's a number of factors that go into vacancy, but one thing we've recognized is that vacancy is going to be your number one expense. So how do we kind of use the 80-20 rule to minimize vacancy for our owners? And thus, that's like the number one thing we can do for you, right? Now, so first of all, there's a number of things that feed into vacancy. However, specifically now, we want to talk about how we can work with you in terms of the rental turn process or getting the property ready between tenants. So there's a number of issues that make things more difficult to do that. But one of the biggest things is really money. And that's probably the biggest thing we're going to talk about, how this is done and kind of what we do. So first of all, there could be a number of ways your property is left, depending on the tenant, depending on where the property is, depending on the standards you should have it versus what it was before the tenant even got there in the first place that's leaving. However, when we go to inspect your property, we're going to, number one, get in as soon as we can. Now, there's a varying time frames, and it will be prioritized based on if the property's already rented. There is a very significant time period it takes to actually get in and get it out, right? And not everybody is trained to do this, so you can't just have any old Joe go in and do the inspections necessary because so many critical things are happening at that point in time. And so we have a specific checklist we use, and we have a specific way of documenting it. So we have a timeline, first of all, in terms of documenting in order to make deductions off a tenant's deposit. And that's 30 days by law. It's a critical thing that has to be done because of, and so part of the inspection is used for that. Part of the inspection is used for getting the property ready for turn or to decide what it is that we need to do. Now, for us, we have a specific checklist, and there's really no option not to do it if you're going to be managed with us. So we have a specific standard, and things like every wall needs to be essentially like new paint, okay? Floor coverings have to be up to a certain standard. And we have that all written down in a list, which probably if you're being sent this video, that list is also going to be with it. So specific standards, this has to be done too for us to continue to manage with you. Then there are items that we will find that we recommend doing, but we don't require it. And then there's really like investment items that we're going to try to suggest to you when they make sense. That again, we're not even necessarily recommend them, but they're options as a way to further invest in your property. An example of those would be, you know what, the floors are fine, but to be honest, there's maybe a certain type of floor, like luxury vinyl plank, that we think would be a significantly positive upgrade that would increase rent and things like that. Or, you know what, perhaps upgrading the countertops to like a stone, granite or marble, some type, or even concrete, or a backsplash, right? Those things are not required, but in certain cases, they can make a big difference depending on how the market is. And so those are opportunities. They're not required or even perhaps even suggested, but they're opportunities for you as an investor to reinvest and kind of upscale your home, give you an opportunity to get out of the, to perhaps even upscale the type of tenant you could attract with that property. So when we inspect, we're going to give you that. But typically, we're also going to immediately start in the clean out process, because oftentimes, sometimes we'll have as little as a week to get your property turned. And if we don't have on day one someone in there cleaning it and doing other required things, we we won't be able to really prepare your property and get it ready for the next tenant in time. Okay, there has to be some trust between us as managers and you. In order to do these tight terms, we need a little bit of upfront agreement in how we do this. And so for the things that absolutely have to be done, normally we're going to move forward, especially if it's under $1,500 total. We don't always have an upfront estimate for everything. Things like, there's several things that you can easily estimate, right? So one is like per room price for painting. That can be quickly calculated. Another is like carpet. It's just based on square footage, right? Or other floor coverings. We can quickly estimate those things and let you know. However, the majority of things really have to be done under kind of like a time and material basis. And there's a few reasons for that. It's not that you can't ever get anybody to estimate, but typically there's a few issues. And one is the fact that humans are really bad. There's a book called Black Swan and Anti-Fragile by a philosopher by the name of Nassim Taleb. Great book if you ever get a chance. Any of those books by Nassim Taleb. He's a really major thinker and has had a lot of success using his thinking. But basically, he proves that humans are fundamentally bad at actually estimating. And so when you ask somebody for an estimate, any good individual at giving estimates is only good in that they are making sure they don't lose money on you, right? That's the only good thing they're at. And so basically they take the worst case scenario and then add a margin so that there is no way for them to lose. And so the ones that stay in business, the quality ones that you actually want on your property, are going to make sure that you lose and they don't. And to some extent, that's the way the market is. For us, there's another issue because it's not just about quality, and it's not just about getting it done. It's also about like time frame. A big part of the quality is how fast it can be done. Because if we've already agreed that there's like a week turn, and we've done this to save you money and make sure that you have minimum amount of vacancy. If we have to go back and forth and find 3 estimates, and we have to do this and that, we could literally, number one, just coordinating estimates can take a large amount of time. Scheduling it in. By the time they get out there to do the estimate, and even our own internal ones, if we're doing estimates, like we're always doing flat rates, flat fees, and sometimes they're very detailed in order to meet the requirements of the courts for deducting deposits, right? Those estimates are different, number one. The 2 estimates, one for using with the courts versus what we would estimate for your property, or getting a third-party estimate. These all take a lot of time, and they also take a specialty. So you don't have a ton of people that can get you a good estimate, and oftentimes they're done by the person that's already busy because it's a high expertise thing. And so in short periods of time, it's not realistic to get an estimate on everything. Oftentimes you have to find people you trust, get them out there, do time and materials for a lot of it, and basic estimates for the things that can be easily estimated. Okay, and so for us to be able to pre-rent houses, there has to be that agreement. And if you don't pre-rent the house, we can choose not to pre-rent. But what I will say is a lot of kind of the big benefit that we offer, that we focused on, and really is kind of like the unique thing about our company, their ability to pre-rent things and quickly turn them, is lost. And so you lose those benefits, and we can't pre-rent if we don't have kind of an upfront agreement, because we can't be running around and going crazy without a kind of an upfront agreement. Like it's almost impossible to actually do it if you need that estimate. Like I want everything estimated before. And so what we have said, we understand that some people there's not that high level of trust. I would urge you to consider maybe we're not the right company if you don't have that trust, right? Maybe you need to go find somebody you do trust and go with them. But we can work with you to get the estimate you want, but we can't pre-rent the house. We just cannot simply be in that position where we have a hard time frame where we personally as a company sign that lease and are obligated to meet that. And then we don't have the discretion to move forward, right? And what I would say is generally your estimate's still going to be more. You're going to lose all that vacancy, and you're probably going to extend your total vacancy by an extra several months. Because at the end of the day, what happens when you don't do this? Well, we don't pre-rent it. We can't start showing this till this is already ready, because you have a vacant house that's half done, people in without contractors. It creates so many issues. It's actually better to just wait. And so 2 weeks to a month it takes, especially with labor these days and how long people's schedules. And by the time they get the estimate, you get that one's not good. You get multiple. You go back and forth. Boom, boom, boom. You're going to do this extra. You wait on materials. You wait on that. There's a supply chain issue. So and so's person who did schedule it, doesn't show up, and so suddenly it's another 2 weeks. Right? By the time you're done, you've lost an extra month or two above and beyond before you could even put it on the market. Then you put it on the market. Then you're waiting for the tenant. By the time they rent it, they might have to give their person notice, right? Where they're currently at, right? So it could easily be, several weeks of marketing. Then you get it. Then they reserve the property. Then they wait 30 to 40 more days, right? And so before you know it, you went from what was a 1 week turn to 2 or 3 months of vacancy or more would not be uncommon. And so we look at this and say, let's cut this to the bid. Let's nip this at the bud. Oftentimes we can even do less work when we already have someone ready to get in the property, right? We can do it for them, right? Oftentimes time and materials is very much less. So you get all these benefits by doing it this way, but it does require a little bit of trust. If you don't have that, that's fine. But it's kind of, what I would say is sometimes for sure that you're going to lose, and it's a pretty high rate. You're probably going to lose by doing it the longer way. So that's kind of the way we look at it, and we can do it either way. And so what we are going to be doing is reaching out to you to kind of make sure that you want to choose like pre-marketing and a kind of a pre-authorization to move forward. What time is it? Everything okay? Oh, yeah.